Welcome back, gamers. We're here again in Dwarf Fortress. As you probably recall, I left you on a bit of a cliffhanger on the last one. We have zombies here. We also have a trade caravan. So, yes, I'm Draxxinusam. We are here in the Lazy Newb pack in Dwarf Fortress. And we've got some things to do. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So first of all, we're going to go through the trading process. So when your caravan has arrived, and your broker has arrived as well, all in the same place, of course, we're going to want to view it. So hit Q and then highlight your trade depots. You can see it's already flashing here for me. So I'll hit trade. And there will be two lists here. I know I sort of went over this in the last episode, but we were sort of at the end of that video, and we kind of wanted to spend more time on it and be a little bit more thorough. So there are two sides here, obviously. This side is the traders, the people, the merchants who have arrived. This is everything they have, and this is everything you've brought to the table to trade with them. So this number, these numbers here and here denote the value of that item. These numbers here denote the weight. Obviously, this is pretty light, and that's kind of getting heavy. I've seen things go as high as like 200 or more. So, and that's definitely something to consider if wagons can't access your trade depot, because if they can't bring wagons, their ability to carry weight is greatly diminished. So if you start offloading like rock mechanisms or those things tend to be really heavy, so it'll actually limit what you can sell to them, which in turn limits what you can buy. So one thing to know, so you can navigate this with the arrow keys. Enter basically sets things for trading. So example, this means this is what I have up for trade. This is the value of all of the items you have selected. This is the value of the items you've selected on this side, and this is what the trader profit is. Obviously the trader wants some profit, so depending on the skill of your trader, if they're really bad, this number is going to be very high. If they're pretty good, it's going to be low, but obviously the trader is still going to want some kind of profit, because otherwise why would you be a trader? So one thing to note is if you're buying things in bins, basically everything below the bin is what's included. So if we scroll down, then there'll be another bin listed, and so the value here is all of the items that are included in the bin. So here I'm getting 390, and the next one I'm getting 290. So if I don't want to go through and hit enter every single time, this is basically a way to save time. And as soon as you hit enter here, it'll basically clear all those out and say, okay, well, you're trading all of these anyway. So we will go ahead and jump over here. We're basically just going to sell everything. We created these things specifically for selling. Traders don't really care what you try and sell them. They will buy anything. Oh man, I don't want to sell all that. Some things have value over the... some things they value more, but they'll basically buy anything unless it's just absolute garbage. But we will get into that in a little bit. So we are going to go ahead and highlight all the things we want to sell, because we're basically the first trader. We're probably going to want we're going to spend every turtle buck we got. So let's see over here. So we basically have 2,140 to work with. So let's go through and find what we want. We probably want iron bars, but not right now. Excuse me, not right now. Just because there's not a whole lot we can use those bars for. We don't really have any sort of smelter or fuel source kind of thing going. So you can definitely buy them, but just be aware that you're going to want a lot of stuff that they have, and you can only afford so much. So you probably want to go with utilitarian things first. So they have a lot of clear glass, which I usually buy because it's an easy way to multiply value. Basically, when it's like raw clear glass of any kind, you can't really turn it into anything, but your gem cutters can cut it. And obviously, if it's raw glass versus cut glass, it's going to have more value. So you basically buy it cheap, you make it worth money, and then you sell it back to a trader or someone, and they'll always buy it, and it'll basically be free money. It just doesn't start out as free money, unfortunately. So Let's see here. If you ever, some of these things, their names get really long, and as you can see, it sort of cuts it off here. So if you're ever like, what the flip is this? You can hit V for view good, and it'll basically tell you what it is up here. If it's a bag that contains something, it'll tell you more about it below that. So we will go ahead and, I just remembered something. So look at this for a minute. Well, now I forgot what I was doing, so whatever. So this is like, a lot of these are like ropes, and those things are kind of important, but for 450 out of 1,960, we're going to want to go somewhere else. And always, items and their value are displayed here, like these little minuses and pluses. That sort of shows you what their quality is. And obviously, so the plus is better, the minus is good, but the plus is better, and eventually like it goes up from there. So that'll also help you determine the value of items. So later on, when you have a lot of master dwarves producing a lot of like really impressive goods, the things you'll be able to trade out for will like, you'll have more stuff and they'll be better quality items, so you'll be able to pretty much buy anything you want. Though there are still limitations because like well-made steel boots like cost more than the turtle bucks that I have available right now. So it's always like, is that really worth it, one boot for that much? Because boots and things have to come in pairs. They're always made in pairs, but when you buy them, you have to buy one boot at a time, which can be incredibly expensive. So let's go through, and you can also, one thing you can do is you can buy up like steel mini forges, bronze axes, that sort of thing, and then you can melt them down later if you're having a real metal shortage, which unless you get lucky in your location, that'll probably always be the case. Or, well, not always, because you can sort of finagle the starting location settings. But for the most part, that is going to be the case. So let's keep going. Cages, they sometimes have things like this cage contains a hen, this is just a cage, that sort of thing. So we don't want any of this. We kind of want booze because we're all, I mean, you can always use booze, trust me. And barrels are important just because they can contain so many items, so we will include those as well. Beer and ale, it's not super expensive, but I mean, it's still useful, and when they're done drinking it, you get a barrel. So probably don't want to buy too many. Well, we'll buy a bucket. Why not? Yeah, you can buy weapons as well. Actually, if they have a pickaxe, I might buy that. Oh, so expensive. We'll buy that one. Yeah, see, and armor can get pretty expensive. Bronze shields, bucklers. You can make all of this stuff. Some of this stuff you can make out of wood, so, but obviously the quality of the material and the kind of material shows you how much it'll be protective. So as you can see here, like I was talking about, things that come in pairs, like gauntlets, they're always made in pairs, but they sell individually. So here we have a steel left gauntlet and a steel right gauntlet. So obviously that becomes very expensive when that is 850 for just one. So I mean, buying both of those would basically break the bank as is. So another thing to note is, depending on who the trader is, you might not be able to use those items. So like if they're human traders, they've got armor that's made for humans. Humans are bigger than dwarves, so it'll say large helmet or large glove or large boot. That basically means a dwarf can't wear it. You can try and sell it or melt it down, any of that sort of thing, but you can't use it for armor. Elves have a similar sort of problem, but all their crap is made out of wood, so those items tend to come across as exotic. And also in the military screen, it'll say like exotic weapon, and all that sort of thing. But it takes special training to be able to use those kind of things. So let's keep going. Gypsum is useful because it can be turned. It's used in the hospital, so I tend to buy that a lot of the time. It's kind of expensive, so I won't probably buy too much. I also buy sand because when you get material, I think I have clay here, but sand is also very important because again, it can make like the raw glass, and you can actually turn it into other things like trap weapons and all sorts of fancy things. So I'm probably not going to buy too much of it because there's something sort of special I want a little bit later on. I don't want sugar, because that's not very useful. Probably good for now on the sand. Sand. Just a bunch of bags. Okay, they didn't bring any sons of biscuits. I was kind of hoping that they would have, like, plant, like, it might be like pigtail fiber seed bag, which is kind of stuff you want, because you can never have too many seeds, because sometimes, either because dwarves have been negligent, or you have been negligent, or things just sort of spun out of control, where you can actually run out of, like, plump helmet spawns, and then you are really upriver because you're basically your normal food source is cut off, and that can be tragic. So it looks like they didn't bring any, which kind of sucks, but that's okay. One thing I almost always buy is leather. Leather is kind of hard to get naturally because if you're even if you're slaughtering puppies, because I know that sounds terrible, but in Dwarf Fortress it's definitely a thing where animals you breed become like your food source and your leather source and your bone source. Yeah, that's basically what puppies become. And cats, if you happen to have a catsplosion in your midst. But you can definitely bring like big animals and breed them. But the problem is they take longer to grow up. They're a little bit harder to defend. Like, as you know, there's a bunch of zombies running around and they're chasing around all my farm animals. So if they get eaten, I'm up a river. So puppies, and like for me, those tend, like, I love puppies in real life. I would never like slaughter puppies. But here in Dwarf Fortress, you get lots of puppies. So you have to do something with them. And you can even sell them. If you want to create cages for all of them, you could stuff them in there and then eventually sell them. I mean, they're not particularly valuable, but it's something you can do. So, but anyways, back to leather. Leather is kind of hard to get, because even no matter what creature you slaughter, if it's something young, it's only going to be worth a couple of leather, like maybe 2 at most. And if it's like something out in the world, I think the most you can get is 16 leather, and that's kind of like for big, like, animal husbandry things like cows and elk and blah 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 blah. So it's not necessarily a very constant supply, and as you can see, it comes across as pretty cheap. Like this cloth bin, very expensive. This bin for leather, very cheap, and it comes with a ton. So I almost always buy all of the leather I can. Sometimes, depending on how rich I am, I'll also buy the cloth, because obviously that's a good way to get money, because as you can see, individual cloth pieces come across pretty cheap, and you can turn those cloth pieces into really valuable, like dresses and cloaks and vests and pants and all sorts of things, but it's sort of a more, like, you have to be a little bit more developed to be able to afford those. So we're gonna mostly skip all of the cloth. We're just gonna look for anything that says leather. And we passed all, so they're out of leather already. So as you can see, we're probably gonna have a little bit of money to work with. Bolts, always very useful. So, I'm probably not going to be able to get away with that, so we're going to return those. And you can also, they also come with, like, crowns and blah, 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 all sorts of dumb stuff. If you were one of the people who decided to go without an anvil, now is the time. See, as you can see, they're not terribly expensive, but if you're trying to get other things, now would be the time to buy it, or maybe in the next caravan. But the only people who will always almost guaranteed bring an anvil are dwarves, and they only come once a year, so that's something to consider. But if you didn't come with an anvil, you can buy it now. It's only 100. I mean, it's a little bit out of the budget, but it's definitely survivable. Here's a bunch of food. Cave lobsters, plump helmets, you can buy them, like, just fresh off the cart, so we're gonna do that a little bit. Whoop. Whoop. Crap. Okay, so that's probably good. I don't need a ton. They bring a bunch of trap parts, and then they bring cheese. Cheese is very hard to make, so if you ever want to actually have cheese, I recommend buying it. But if you're doing something else, I recommend not, because it's a very, very involved process in this game, and it's very difficult. Like, to make cheese, it has to be a female creature, it has to have recently given birth, so it's actually lactating, it has to be chained, and then, it's a crazy setup. Unless you're incredibly advanced, I would not recommend trying to make your own cheese. And that's true of also, like, shearing, which is really annoying, but, you know. So we've got some money to play with. We might not necessarily be able to get away with actually buying things, but we're certainly going to try. So let's see what we can try and acquire here. I want something... Let's actually buy some weapons, because we are having a problem with dead people. Sure. And these aren't very valuable, but they exist, and I mean, even if it's slightly pokey or smashy, it's going to be pretty good. So let's go ahead and get those. That's way too expensive. That's kind of expensive. I guess I can buy that. Oh, no, can't buy that. That's really expensive. Man, they kind of hose me. Usually they bring a lot better stuff the first time around, but I mean, usually they don't bring everything you want, but still, they bring a few things. I feel like I got gypped. Oh, no, party trading. Well, maybe we'll try and get another expensive weapon or something. Let's see. Actually, maybe... No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to buy that. You know what? That's good. We'll settle with this. So, when you're done trading, there are a few commands. All of the commands are here. You can offer your goods, which is basically like if you're trying to become mountainholmes, you basically give them a lot of your crap, and the king is like, "Oh, this place is so rich. They keep giving me all this garbage." Whatever. It'll also like make them want to send more stuff your way, like more wagons or whatever. But I mean, usually in the later game, just being rich will make them want to send you wagons. So, you know, it's up to you if you actually want to trade anything. But, so we can view goods, we can mark items for trade, or you can definitely seize stuff. That's dangerous, because it'll basically be like an act of war, and they'll beat the crap out of you, or they'll try. So if you think, yeah, like if you want to mix things up, you can definitely sort of like start crap like that. Or if you just think that it's really valuable and you don't want to pay for it, that's something you can do. But I would recommend having a military. So I'm definitely not going to try and rob these guys. So we're good. So we're going to hit enter. Or, not enter. T for trade. So he's like, okay, yeah, that's a fair deal. So we bought all of that. If he had said, I can't see you getting away with all those goods qualities such as this, that means you wanted a lot of things that were really good quality, and the things that you were selling were kind of crap. So you're gonna have to like knock some things off of his side. You're being like, okay, well, then go through your list and decide what you can do without, and try and get it out of there. Usually, if it's if it's a better quality or if it's more valuable, those are the things you kind of want to knock out first. But if it's something you really want, you're just gonna have to knock out more low quality stuff. So it sort of evens out. You know what I mean? Or he can say, like, he is not pleased with that deal. He might offer you a counter proposal, or he'll just say, your deal sucks. You can do that 3 times. If you get that message more than 3 times, he basically gets fed up with you, and he's like, you know what, we're just going to leave. You guys are trying to stonewall us. This sucks. We hate you. Please die. And they will leave, and you will get nothing. So you have to be careful. That is why you want your dwarf to have good trade skill and good like conversation skills. If they're bad at that, they're going to make a larger profit off of you, and you're going to have to give them more to get what you want. So that's something to consider always. Also, if you're ever trading with elves, if you trade any, like this is a goods bin, so if I view this, it tells you what it's made out of. In this case, it's maple. If I traded, if these were elves, and I traded this wooden bin, Even if I was just trying to give them the things that were in, like sell the things that were in it, the elves get really, really pissed off if you do a couple of things. If you completely deforest a map, like if you're like, Drax, why are you doing these like swaths of trees? Just do the whole freaking thing and they'll clear it all out. You can do that, but if elves show up, they will be really pissed at you. They're like, why are you taking more than you need from the forest? They can declare war on you for those kind of things. If you try and trade with them wood, they get really pissed at you and they will leave immediately. You don't get the 3 strikes, you're out. You get, if you sell them anything that's, if you trade bins that are all made out of metal and there just happens to be 1 wood item in there, they will spot it and they will hate you. They're not going to necessarily declare war right off the bat, but if you keep doing it, they will. So be careful. And the more they dislike you, the less cool things they're going to bring you. So just as an FYI. I think that's all we need to do for there. So now that we're done trading, we got everything we want, and we're, well, not everything we want, but everything we wanted that they had. So we're going to tell our trader, remember you have to tell him, okay, we don't need you anymore, so he can wander off and talk to the guy. As you recall from the last episode, we were having a bit of an undead guy problem, which is all these guys. So what I'm trying to do is, because I don't really have a military yet, because I didn't think I'd be having this much of a problem so early on, I haven't started anything to do with the military. So what I'm trying to do is, because if you look down here, there are all these dwarves hanging around. So if you hit K to view them, like here's a sword dwarf, here's an axe dwarf, here's an axe dwarf, here's an axe dwarf. So they sort of expect that sometimes people are going to be dicks and they're going to attack their caravan. So they send troops with them. And so basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get all the dead guys to come wander down and get beat up by their military dwarves. If that actually happens or not, we'll see, because these animals keep wandering back and the zombies are like, ooh, delicious sheep, and they'll like chase it away, and then they'll come wandering back. I'm also hoping that if they wander out, like they'll be close to the door, and then the zombies will be like, oh crap, and as soon as those military dwarves see them, they'll go after them. So I'm kind of using someone else's military to advance my own goals. But that's definitely an option, and they definitely, for the first few times, they don't mind, but if people in their caravan, if their goods disappear a lot, like the whole caravan is slaughtered, which has actually happened to me a few times, there will be a siege, and the caravan will arrive at the same time. Sometimes they kind of correspond that when caravans arrive, that's when sieges happen. It's not necessarily always one-to-one, but it definitely is a little bit more common. The caravan will be like, doo-doo-doo, we're walking over here, and the siege will crush them. And it's kind of cool, because then you get all of the stuff that was in that caravan, but if it happens too often, the civilizations will get, like, suspicious and angry with you. They're like, why is it that every time we send a caravan, everyone ends up dead? This seems really weird. And they will eventually either stop sending you caravans, or they'll just declare war on you. So it's something you can use and abuse a little bit, but be careful of abusing it too much. So we're gonna see what's going on with these dead guys. Where are these dead guys? And I think the rabbit that we had that starved to death came back to life. It's right there. I don't know what that's about. And the dead guy that we killed before is been revived again. Which seems like a problem with a necromancer, but I don't really... Did he just wander off the map? Nope. So what I'm going to do here, as soon as these guys stop annoying me, is I'm going to actually get started on my military. Because obviously we're going to have a problem with this, and we need to get training immediately. Which is weird, because I don't think I chose a savage place when I was in the startup, so, you know, whatever. So I also, you may have noticed in the last episode, I sort of removed all of the creatures from this pasture. That way they don't, when they're like done of being scared, they wander back there, and then they can... Because if they wander back there and then the zombie comes back, then it'll basically chase them again. So it's basically this loop of like, oh, okay, oh, okay. So basically, I want them to die by those dwarves. this is the second part of trading, at least with mountainholmes. I mentioned in the last video that their liaison is really important. This is why it's really important, because you can sort of order goods. Like, you can say, we will pay you more for this, and we will pay you more for that. So we'll be like, oh, okay. So this is a list of everything you can order. It's basically essentially everything in the game. Not really, but kind of. And it's more general items than actually like, I want bismuth bronze armor. No, you don't get to pick what it's made out of. You just get to pick what you want. So there are a couple of things that we definitely want to order specifically. So let me get up here at the top. So this is what at the beginning. So you can scroll through this menu with the plus and whoop. So you can scroll through this menu with a plus or minus on your number pad. You can view your stocks with enter, which is what this menu is. It can kind of tell you what you have. If you happen to be really smart, you can be like, oh, I only have so many of this. It can definitely be useful. I'm sort of more used to just doing it from my head anyways, because there's things that you always need. So basically what you navigate this side of the menu with the plus or minus, you will always be in the center menu, which you navigate with the arrow keys. And then you basically use the left and right arrow keys to increase the priority, which is over here. It basically increases by 20... I'll get there in a minute. Well, when we actually get to something, I'll show you. So we don't actually ever order any leather, because they always bring it. So the thing with this here is the priority basically tells you how much... Basically tells them how much you want it. And to increase priority means that we want it so badly, we are willing to pay you more to bring it. And that basically is what motivates them to bring it along. So since they always bring it, we don't necessarily want to adjust the price and have it be more expensive. So every time you click this over once, so 0 means no price adjustment. 1 over means it'll essentially be a price adjustment of about like 25% or so. And then that basically it won't be exactly 25%. It's basically the price fluctuates a little bit based on quality. So it'll be somewhere between 25%. And it basically does that every time you move it over. So if something is very high priority, you better be willing to pay for it. But there's kind of a thing about that. So if you really need something, usually you want it to be low cost. So the thing that's... illustrates this the best is logs. They come across as like 2 turtle bucks a piece, which is a freaking steal, because you can turn it into anything that can be incredibly valuable. And you need it for all sorts, like you need it for fuel, you need it for making beds, you need it for making bins. Wood is very, very valuable, and that's why they sort of like you want to make things out of rock, because rock is sort of less valuable because there's so much of it. Wood is obviously a little bit more renewable, but it takes a while to get it back. So if you chop down a whole forest and you use all that wood, then you're basically stuck without having any wood. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to hold down and right and just have this all jack up. So I'm letting them know, hey, we want to buy wood. Bring wood. So this will, it'll basically increase it from about 2 turtle bucks to about 6 a log, which is still an amazing deal. Like, I mean, you saw some of the stuff I was buying was like 100, so or like 150. So until we get really rich, this will basically be like that much worth of logs. So they'll bring like, well, probably even more. I've seen them be several pages of logs. If you're a little bit later in the game, you might want to, or you're having a problem actually getting metal, you might want to order up bars. There's another way around that, but it's a little bit more expensive. Actually, this is the more expensive way, but it's less of a process. So if you think, oh, we want to start making our own armor, but we don't have any sort of ore to use on our own, you can order your own bars. I would either order iron or steel, unless you're just like out for anything, in which case you probably want to go for copper, but obviously the type of material denotes what kind of protective value or damaging value it has. So, but for the most part, the only thing that's really important is the quality, the metal, and the quality of the item for armor. Basically, a sword is still going to cut somebody, and a steel sword is going to cut someone as well as a copper sword. The only part where it gets really crazy is like if you have adamantite, but that's way, way end game, or if you're crazy, maybe early game, but you're probably going to have bigger problems than what adamantite does if you found adamantite. So, let's continue. I'm not actually going to order any bars. I don't think we need them just yet. I can't really afford them. Well, I guess I'll bump iron a little bit. These are all very expensive, so steel especially is like 300 or 200 turtle bucks a bar, so if you're jumping that up even a little bit, you're not going to get very many, but they're going to be very expensive anyway. So if I jump that to high priority, it's going to be like 1,000 turtle bucks a bar or something ridiculous. So, actually, I guess the most it would be if it's 200 would be 400. But still, that's a lot for one bar when like a breastplate takes 3 bars. So it's definitely something to consider, or you can just wait for them to bring that armor and then you can buy it from there. Sort of depends on how you want to take it. Steel, I would definitely recommend, unless you have like flux stone and all sorts of stuff ready to go, lots of fuel, you probably just want to go ahead and buy steel bars. Iron is a little bit different because you can melt down iron weapons that come in sieges. It's very cheap, relatively speaking. You don't have that extra step in there, so I would I'm less likely to recommend buying iron bars, but it's a little bit cheaper. And it's less steps. Like, you don't have to use the fuel to melt it down and then the fuel to turn it into something else. It's basically, because you basically melt it down into a bar and then you take the bar and turn that into something else. Whereas if you just have the bar, you can just turn it into something else directly. But obviously you're going to pay for it. Whereas if it comes in a siege and you have to melt it down, it's free. So anyways, so I ordered up bars. You don't really need anything else. I mean, metal is always good, but you usually always have some type of metal available. Provided you chose your beginning spot right, so we're going to leave that. And even that, I'm like, well, maybe I'll bump it up a little more. Whatever. You never really order gems unless you're really out of it. You can always buy sand and turn that into the glass, and you can sort of use that as your gems. You don't it's basically a renewable type of gem. You don't need to mine for those gems, and they're basically, you can put them in stuff. That's about it. To increase the value, whatever. Stone blocks, I would not order stone blocks if it was the last. Don't order stone blocks. You can turn any stone into a stone block. Don't order those. Don't be dumb. Here we can order seeds. I usually bump up plump helmets and pigtails just because they're kind of important. Maybe cave wheat and rock nuts as well. I don't need them so badly that I'm going to make them charge me a whole lot, but I'll bump it up just to see if they'll get me a few. You can do the same with anvils. If you didn't happen to bring an anvil, you can jump this all the way up to yellow, and that'll basically be 200 turtle bucks for an iron anvil or 600 for a steel anvil. Weapons, again, since you can't really order the type or the quality of them, it's sort of kind of iffy if you actually want to do that. Like, if you order a mace, they might bring like a copper mace, a steel mace, a bronze mace, and personally, that kind of like doesn't sit right in my head because they're kind of expensive, and the fact that they're like so different means it's going to be like, if you look at your squad, it'll be like you'll be like the rebels in the Civil War. It'll just be like what you brought from home, and won't be very uniform. It'll be weird. So I tend to try and make my own weapons, but I mean, I might actually have to do something different in this game just because zombies are threatening to eat our brains, and that sucks. I don't want zombies to eat our brains. Training weapons, all made out of wood. I would not recommend ordering those. Ammo, very useful. You go through it a lot very quickly, especially when you're hunting and you have lots of sieges and that thing, and your crossbow dwarves are shooting lots of stuff. So I tend to order it. They tend to bring it a lot. I make mine out of bone and wood. They're not the sturdiest material, so it has a harder time puncturing like armor. They still do it, but less often. So the bolts they tend to be made out of metal, which obviously increases their value, which makes it hard to purchase sometimes. You can make pretty much all of these, except for a few, out of wood or glass. So if you have an income of sand, or you're collecting your own sand, you can always turn them into your own weapons. So picks, up to you. If you're having a problem with metal right off the bat, you can definitely order some, and they'll bring some. Or if you're just having you're having to spend metal on other things, you can have them bring picks. This is basically up to you if you want to order it up. Again, you always have to consider price. Bodywear, this kind of has the same problem of the weapon, where they're of varying types and qualities. So it's sort of iffy if you want to order that up, because if you like super increase breastplates and the only thing they bring is steel breastplates, steel can get very expensive. Some items I've seen for a 2,000. So if you put it on max priority, they'll bring a bunch of steel breastplates you can't afford because there'll be 4,000 turtle bucks and you have like 3,000 to trade. So, or it'll cut so heavily into your budget you don't want to buy them anyway because you have other things to buy. So it's up to you. I personally tend to avoid it. Handwear, footwear, all that stuff still tends to be in the same thing. Toys, never order. They don't do anything except sell. Or they'll bring them in metal and you can melt them down. That's up to you if you want to order them. If you saw my other video, pets died. Mostly my dogs. I had to order new ones. Most of these are relatively cheap, so you can jack up the price. Or if you want sort of like a yak farm or whatever to have leather and bone and food, that's an option as well. But as you can see on my map, I'm having a problem with zombies, so it's something to consider. You'll also have to figure a way out to feed them and defend them, because there's no way to create hay, and if they don't have grass, they starve. There is actually a way around this, and it's called like a greenhouse, obviously, but that's a little bit more advanced method. I usually employ that method to get surface crops as well, but that's a little bit later. I wouldn't worry too much about that right now. Drinks, Drinks they sort of always bring, so you don't have to worry about that. Cheese, powders, blah, blah, blah. You might want to order up gypsum just because it's sort of hard to make, because it takes very specific types of stone, and it's used for your hospital. Meat, I would not recommend ordering any of these. You might ask for plump helmets, they'll probably bring those. Stone, there are a few types of stone that I would order and put it at max, because stone, the raw stone, they don't value, no matter what the stone does, they don't value it very much. So there's a couple of things you might want to order. One is not tetrahedrite. Bituminous coal, maximize. I recommend doing this every single time. Anytime you see them here and they ask what do you want, maximize bituminous coal. I don't care what sort of circumstances you're in, you want bituminous coal. There's also another one just like it. It's called lignite. If you happen to see it, shout at me, because I can definitely hear you through your computer. Lignite. Where are you, lignite? Limonite. Close. Gotta hurry because we're kind of running out of time here. Hematite. Order hematite. Bituminous coal. Where are you, lignite? Sandstone, calcitite, siltstone. Okay, it can't be that far. I know it's around here. Some stuff will obviously be a little bit more expensive, like platinum nuggets. That's obviously something you want to pay attention to. Limonite. Is it limonite? I thought it was lignite. Pretty sure it's lignite. Sandstone, blah, 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 blah. So, okay, so hematite is basically a type of iron ore. So that this is 1 for 1. Order 1 hematite, you will get an iron bar out of it, provided you have a fuel. So what I'm looking for, bituminous coal is a type of fuel, obviously. So you basically have to convert it to fuel. It costs 1 fuel to convert it to fuel, but it generates 9 units of fuel. So it's basically a free 8 units of fuel, and since it's already in its unprocessed form, it's very cheap. So you can basically order up a gazillion of it, and they'll be like, "You want this garbage? Fine." So you can get away. I can't find lignite, and since we're running out of time, I guess I'm just gonna lignite. I'm 99% sure it's called lignite, and it's basically another form of that fuel. It basically I believe it costs 1 fuel to process, and it either makes 5 or 6 fuel types, and it basically is a net gain of 5 fuel, which is very important, because if you don't have those things in your natural biome, you have to use wood, and wood is, like I said before, very valuable, especially if you have to use it for fuel. You can go through it very quickly, so you always want to order that. Always, always, always. Even if you think you have a fuel, order it anyways. It never hurts to supplement what you're getting, unless you're like really afraid of them weighing themselves out, in which case maybe don't order it, but I would. So anyways, maybe it is limonite. Actually, it might be limonite. 1 second. Do-do-do, do-do-do. Hold music. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Limonite is also another type of iron ore, so we're going to pump that up a little bit. What was the other one? You can use page up and page down to sort of get you places faster. No, not limestone. I know that's not it. I'm sure it's around. I just can't see it. God, that really annoys me. Oh well. Anyways, moving right along. We're running out of time. Bags. I wouldn't necessarily order those. They will always come. Barrels, same sort of thing. They will always come. You might want to order sand. Sand is kind of cheap. And if you don't have sand available, it then becomes a little bit more valuable because you can create things out of it. If you happen to have had clay, or if you happen to have sand in your biome but not clay, you might want to order clay instead of sand, that sort of thing. So if you have one, you kind of want the other, just because it can be used and that sort of thing. So here is another place you can order these items for relatively cheap. Charcoal is a type of fuel. Coke is a type of fuel, and lye is used for soap. So go ahead and order up all of those things. It'll come across relatively cheap, and it's incredibly valuable in terms of your economy. So that is essentially everything I recommend ordering. I may have missed a few things. As you saw, I was wrestling with lignite for forever and I couldn't find it. So there's probably some other things. And you can definitely go through and assess what you want and what you need based on your individual fortress, because what you need might not be what I need, and what I think I need might not be what you think you need. So use your own judgment, make your own calls on the level that you want to put on the priority, and go from there. So we are done with him. He will actually come back and say you'll have to finalize, and he will show you the levels that he will pay for items. That'll come up in a couple, probably next episode, but you can sort of figure it out from there. Alright, so sorry that this video has gone on a little long. Hopefully it was worth it. So I will say thank you for watching. I've been Draxxinusam, and you've been fantastic. We'll see you next time.